Welcome back. We are now going to analyze or discuss one-sidedly a bag of sweets. As always, the summary first. A young Muslim woman called Kulthum assists in the family shop on Fridays when her brothers attend prayers at the mosque. One day, she is surprised to see her estranged sister, Khadija, entering the shop. Khadija left the family 3 years before to marry a Christian man. She has been calling at the family home daily after the passing away of her parents, hoping for reconciliation. But so far, the family has refused her entry and they ignore her time and time again. Then she decides to change track and meet the eldest sister at the shop on Fridays, and you will see later that they have been best friends. Kulthum continues to ignore the advances of her sister, even though she knows that as the eldest, she had the ability to change the mind of her family members. On a whim, one day, she gives her sister a bag of sweets, but continues to ignore her until finally, Khadija does not come back the next Friday. Now, title, remember there's always the question about the relevance or the significance of the title or whether it is a suitable title. Muslims regard giving gifts as good manners that maintain and strengthen relations between the giver and the recipient. This explains why Khadija hopes for reconciliation and continues to come to the shop after her sister has given her the bag of sweets. It furthermore explains why the brothers endlessly look for an explanation for the bag of sweets Kulthum gives her sister, despite the fact that she does not want to relent and forgive her sister. The themes: the lack of tolerance. The theme of intolerance is noted throughout this short story. The family is unable to forgive Khadija for leaving them to marry into a Christian family. It's ironic, however, that Kulthum mentions her own Christian friends, but she shows no tolerance and acceptance of her sister's choice in life. Forgiveness. The family blames Khadija for the death of their parents. And despite being practicing Muslims, they cannot find it in their hearts to forgive. On the other hand, it appears as if Khadija has forgiven her family for shunning her all these years. Pretense. Kulthum is adept at keeping up pretenses. She feels herself softening towards her sister when she realizes that Khadija resembles her mother the closest of all the children, but she pretends that she feels nothing for her. This is actually such a sad story. Expectations versus reality. Khadija hopes that by showing up regularly and by just being herself, that her family will relent and welcome her back into the inner circle. In reality, it is Kulthum's stubborn refusal to accept her sister into their midst that prevents their reconciliation. It is interesting that in a Muslim culture, which is patriarchal, Kulthum has the power to decide whether she's going to forgive her sister, whether the whole family is going to forgive her sister or not. So number 4, how is the story told? First of all, we look at the setting. And remember, when you have to answer a question on the setting, you have to discuss the time and the place. The story is set in the family shop of a Muslim family and in their house. When Kulthum talks to her brothers, there is no clear indication of the location of the shop. And when you have to discuss the time of an extract, it depends on which extract, where in the story you have to discuss. Structure and plot development. As always, we have the exposition first, which is the introduction. At the beginning of the short story, the reader is introduced to 2 sisters, Kulthum and Khadija. It is clear from the start that there's tension between these two because Kulthum ignores her sister even though she carries on talking. And then Kulthum, who is the eldest, manages the family shop on Fridays when the brothers attend prayers at the mosque, and this is the only time Khadija comes to the shop. Now the question remains, why does she come to the shop? Is it because she knows that Kulthum is the one standing in the way of her reconciliation with her family? Is it because she was the closest to Kulthum? Her brother comments on it later on in the story. The rising action. We realize that there are past events that influenced Kulthum's attitude. The most important being Khadija leaving her Muslim family and marrying a Christian with whom she then has a baby. After the death of her parents, Khadija pays daily visits to her family home in the hope of reconciliation, but each time she is turned away at the door. And then, as a last bid for forgiveness, she starts visiting the store when she knows she will find her sister, Kaltum, on her own, in the hope that her sister, to whom she used to be very close, will relent, welcome her back in the family, but sadly to no avail. The climax of the story is when Kaltum gives Khadija a bag of cheap sweets in a moment of irritation. Khadija might take it as a sign of reconciliation, as the Muslims view gifts as very important and significant, but Kaltum's intentions are not reconciliation because she carries on ignoring her sister. It does, however, make her brothers think that she could be ready to forgive her, which then would allow for her return to the family. And if she speaks the word, everybody will welcome Khadija back with open arms. Kaltum one day realizes that her sister has the closest resemblance to their mother, and she is wavering for a minute there. At that moment, she doesn't want Khadija to leave because she realizes they are still blood relatives. But she allows her lack of tolerance and her inability to forgive to allow her to relentlessly ignore her sister. The resolution. Khadija finally stops coming to the family shop, and it seems as if Kaltum regrets her harsh treatment of her sister. And I always hope when I read this story that after this, one of them will be the lesser, go back to the other sister again for forgiveness and reconciliation. Kaltum waits for her sister that day when she realizes that she's not coming back, even past the shop's closing time, which shows that she hopes that Khadija will return. Characterization. We have three characters in this story. The first is the narrator. She is a young woman who heads her family after the death of her parents. Why did her parents die? They all blamed Khadija. She is a round character. She experiences both inner conflict and outer conflict. She appears cold-hearted. She holds grudges, not only because she was hurt that her younger sister did not share her secret with her, but also for the betrayal to the family. And then she's stubborn because she struggles to forgive her sister for leaving the family, and she believes her leaving was a betrayal causing the death of their parents. Khadija, the younger sister, is principled. She marries the Christian man, even though she knows it will cause a rift between her and her family. However, she stays true to her Muslim religion and is motivated by love. And then she is unwavering in her pursuit of an improved relationship between her and her family members. She's kind, she's always smiling, she's forthcoming because she expresses her emotions clearly, and she openly declares that she misses her family traditions and especially Kaltum, her eldest sister. She's loving because she expresses her love for her Christian husband and baby. Then the only brother who plays a role in the story is Abdul, eldest brother. He follows the example set by Kaltum because she is the eldest child, and he does not speak to Khadija. The narrator's point of view. The story is narrated in the first person, and the narrator is the main character, who is Kaltum. She is a young woman. She's the eldest child in an orphaned family. She expresses her negative sentiments towards her sister by ignoring her. And despite the fact that she realizes her sister resembles their mother the most, she doesn't allow her heart to soften. She tells the story of how her sister betrayed the family by her bid for freedom, and only at the end, after the visit stopped, do we get an indication that she waited for her sister to return. The style. There's a formal style used throughout the story, but in the dialogues, contractions are used because that is just natural. That is how people speak to each other. The style is appropriate, the formal style, because Kaltum considers herself to be the superior of her sister. She did not betray the family. She did not betray her religion. It also mirrors the age of the woman. She is the eldest. The diction. Some examples of figures of speech. There are a few similes. Remember, a simile is when something is compared to something else using the words like or as. The narrator compares her feelings towards her sister as cold as the last kiss I gave to anyone. The kiss has long been forgotten. It is cold, so her feelings just as cold as that last kiss. The narrator says Khadija's hands resting easily on the cold glass counter were like birds' wings, relaxed, yet with a potential for unimaginable flight. In the video on the questions, we are going to discuss this simile in greater depth. Metaphors. A metaphor is also a comparison, but remember, we do not use like or as. It is a direct comparison. And when you have to discuss the effectiveness of a metaphor, you have to explain what is being compared to what and why. The narrator describes how one day in a trance, I reached for a fistful of sweets. To explain, she was not fully aware of the reasons for the action. So she compares her state of mind, not being fully aware of why she's doing it, to the state of mind of a person who is in a trance, who does not know what they are doing. Personification. She says, I could see those hands running across the keyboard. Her hands moved so fast it resembled a person running. Remember, hands cannot run because they are inanimate. They connected to the person, but they are not the person. Irony. Remember, when you explain irony, you must explain both sides. This is what happens, yet we expected this to happen. Usually you use the words yet or but in an explanation for irony. A bag of sweets is supposed to be a treat and bring joy to the receiver, but in this story it is used as a form of insult to the one who receives it. Khadija is disrespected and she was treated like a child. This is the explanation that Kulthum gives her brothers. It is ironic that Kulthum never speaks to her sister and tells her brothers she wishes that she would stop calling at the shop. Yet, when Khadija does not come one day, Kulthum waits for her until after closing time. So she was not as overjoyed as she had indicated when her sister did not come that day. Tone and mood. The tone is gloomy because Kulthum only expresses negative thoughts. And the mood, because of that tone, is angry and upset. And that is it, in a nutshell. Short and sweet. See you on the other side in the questions video.